Добрый день, дорогие друзья.
Good afternoon, dear friends.
Today,
we have very interesting discussions, very interesting subjects at the Gaida Forum, and our today's session is dedicated to digital transformation, which is designated by the President, as you're aware, as one of our strategic goals until 2030. This is no coincidence, because truly, as I believe, we can only address other tasks, accomplish the goals in terms of economic growth, eradicating poverty, social reform without a deep digital transformation of all of these sectors. Digital transformation is one of the key global trends for the next decade. To ensure ubiquitous digitalization, all the necessary conditions have already been created, both the technologies and personnel. Human labor force are there, and many industries have already undergone digital transformation, such as taxi, delivery services, finance. We can see the level of penetration of technology very high. There are some conservative industries, such as social services. They are still at initial stages of digital transformation. I think across the world, the biggest effect is going to be yielded by healthcare. Once it undergoes digital transformation, it's one of the biggest industries, biggest economic branches in the economy. It is only at initial stages of this deep process. And I think we're going to talk about that today. The coronavirus pandemic has certainly given an additional impetus towards making headway here. It has not brought about, however, any drastic changes. It only accelerated the trends that already been there. It has also exacerbated all the controversies that exist in our society and in the world. And it has given an additional push to many other processes. Attending our discussion today are those for whom digital transformation is not just a buzzword, because each and every participant, each and every panelist can boast a number of projects already implemented this as part of their everyday life. Let me introduce Anton, Kotyakov, Minister of Labor and Social Protection, Daniil, Egorov, Head of the Federal Tax Service, Anastasiya, Rakova, Deputy Mayor of Moscow, and Tigran, Khudaverdyan, CEO of Yandex. Unfortunately, another minister, Maxim, could not join us today. He is the spearheading digital transformation, and the government, unfortunately, is contracted coronavirus, just as many other people across our country and throughout the world. I would like to wish him a speedy recovery. Unfortunately, we're going to hold our discussion today without Maxim. The first question I would like to address to Anton Kotyakov. As previously mentioned, coronavirus has pushed forward digitalization in many industries, as we can see in Russia and social services. We've seen some very good qualitative shifts. A very good example is the payment of benefits for families with children. Last year there were 2 payments to the tune of 10,000 twice in summer and also one in winter. And with every iteration, it took less and less time to wire the money. I think in December it took just a couple of days, 4 days, I think. Colleagues from the ministry remember well, it was on a day off that the money was wired in December. So it is a very good example showing how social services could be provided very swiftly, and the money made it to the families at precisely the juncture when there was need for that money. And digitalization allowed that to happen. Minister Kotyakov, could you tell us more about the projects you're implementing, and how do you envisage digitalization in the field you're working in? Yes, I can tell you that 2020 was a marathon of unconventional yet very successful solutions. I recall very vividly March 2020, we saw citizens arriving from abroad, potentially suffering from coronavirus, and something had to be done about it. We had to ensure that they stayed at home. At the same time, we could not leave them without livelihood, so we had to organize sick leave for them. So it took us 16 to 18 hours to organize a brainstorm, and we came up with an idea of direct payments to the citizens. Within 3 days, we managed to lay the legal groundwork, and the social insurance fund started wiring the money. That was the first example of wiring the money directly to our citizens. So fast, and there were 3 payments to the tune of 5,000 for children and 2 for children from 3 to 16 years for families with such children. And we managed to propel our interagency cooperation to a whole new level. We decreased the time for processing information. What I can tell you is that on the one hand, we provided citizens with a new service. They could use the public services web portal as a single window to access all these services. And we also made sure they didn't have to collect all the paperwork. So we shifted the burden from the citizens to the public agencies. To a large extent, this was made possible thanks to a high digitalization level of our government bodies, and we also had to change some processes. So right now, when a citizen files an application, that's the only thing he or she has to do, and the rest is up to the government bodies, and it's a huge deal of work. I'm very grateful to Daniil for organizing all our cooperation on children, the registry offices, and all the rest of the bodies responsible for that digitized all the database on children, and we've got this whole database digitized with their information on their parents, with the rest. We worked with the Interior Ministry on the registration, on the citizenship, on the nationality. So we managed to transform how our bodies cooperate, which allowed to shift the burden from the citizens to transform this very format of cooperating with our citizens, interacting with them. You asked what we're doing right now and what comes next. Starting from December, a new law entered into force on proactive informing of our citizens of such benefits and support measures they're entitled to. In December, we organized on the basis of public services website, and citizens got an opportunity to file an application to get information on these support measures. And right now, we are proactively informing citizens what exactly they're entitled to. Should this or that circumstance occur, there are 3 right now: birth of a child, pension scheme, and unemployment. All of a sudden, you give birth to a child once. Well, no, not once. Throughout your life, it can happen all the time. But each and every child is born only once. But it can play out differently, We have to put it on a personal level. We need to understand whether this is the first child, or the second, or the third, whether both parents are working or just one is working, whether both of them are Russian citizens or just one of them. So in order to make sure we provide the correct service, we are trying to expand the digitalization of this procedure. We want to provide information in a targeted, swift fashion. This is the main goal our government has set before itself. And our task, as of now, is to introduce this principle of social treasury and to expand it to cover all public services, or at least as many as possible. Right now, with the federal service, not all of them are provided on this principle, and as we can see, around 80% of such services, they have not yet made it to the website. They are localized or regionalized. They vary from one region to other. That is why there is no equality throughout the territory of the Russian Federation. That is why we're trying to digitize all of them to make sure these things are targeted. We need to ensure social justice and social equality throughout the whole of the Russian territory. When you talk about proactive provision of services, I feel that human being becomes your focus, and everything is built around the human person. It's not based on who can issue what certificate. No, you're trying to make sure that it is convenient and comfortable for the person to get any service he or she needs. And this is something you profess and something we laud. Yes, indeed, a human person is the main priority. We need to tailor everything to the human person's needs and requirements. Next, I would like to move on to Daniil Egorov. As is well known, the Federal Tax Service has left far in the past the basic stage of digital transformation. I think digital transformation, however, is an ongoing process. You can always add something, make the next step, introduce a new algorithm, but one can be sure that the Federal Tax Service is one of the first federal bodies that managed to traverse this path of digital transformation, and the results are evident. On the one hand, the tax receipts are growing. On the one hand, the tax service creates a very good, comfortable environment for those who work without violations, who live in a law-abiding fashion, as it were. Well, of course, tax administration is one of the public governance system. So what do you think digital transformation can provide to the public system, to the public governance, and is it going to make the public service more efficient? What benefits are there for the people? Thank you very much for your question. I cannot say that my position has crystallized, that it's not going to shift. As you said, digital transformation is an ongoing process, and I feel that. And it's expanding in all directions. And it brings me to my first conclusion. The hierarchy is changing, and we'll have to do that. It's a data-centric governance approach. We have to adapt depending on what kind of data we're working with. There is something I need to say, to point out, something we need to be prepared for. As far as I understand, first we need to abandon the following principle. If you want to do something well, you should do it yourself. This is a principle we need to leave behind. It is an impediment in digital transformation, because it is thanks to the selection of services and technological solutions that you can be successful in the tasks you set before yourself. Second, communication. Communication is changed through digital transformation. The whole flows of data, of information, they are changed, they're transformed. Citizens are our clients, as it were, and the flows of information from them are changing. And we have to agree that once digital transformation happens, we see some interesting phenomena. First, if you organize the feedback system correctly, then the number of questions and complaints grows exponentially. That is why when building KPIs, the government has to be very correct, very prudent. If the number of complaints goes up, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing a bad job. That's the first thing you have to understand. Apart from that, you have to understand that if you're doing your job well, most probably there's going to be no feedback whatsoever, because usually it is the negative feedback that gets to you. Personal communication is simply going away because there is no personal communication. You're working with a website and no one can impress you. There is only the process that is either run smoothly or not. So we need to do everything in our power so that still there is some kind of feedback which allows us to improve and to go forward. And this is going to be the fundamental matter to address going forward. Another thing, we see right now that standardization has two sides. On the one hand, there is a comprehensible, understandable interface for taxpayers, for the clients. On the one hand, there is a restricted choice and the competition between products goes down. And these are the risks we will have to address, and that's where the danger lurks. Third, we have to realize that our products are not purely government-based. Tigran is probably going to touch upon how exactly we make these products. Yes, Yandex pays its taxes. Yes, we follow that very closely, also based on the data that Yandex provides. Our products are kind of a compilation that brings together different products from public and private sector, from different teams consisting of both government officials and non-government officials. And thanks to this collaboration, new mechanisms are going to emerge that will allow people to get where they want. And the last thing I would like to say, in the past we had people filing their tax declarations to the service. First they had to bring them personally, then we allowed them to be sent by post. Now you can access the website. I think next level is going to be absolutely different. The client won't have to do anything. We will make sure everything is automatic. I believe that as providers of services, we have to be as invisible as possible and at the same time as proactive as possible, so that if a person needs anything, we would be there. And there's going to be a synergy between the providers of services and those who are our clients. I think for the second time in a row, and I think Anastasiya is going to mention that as well, there is this client orientation. The Ministry of Labor and Social Protection and the Federal Tax Service put the human person at the center. And it is around the human person that all business processes are built in a manner which is convenient and comfortable to the human person, while bringing down the transactional costs that old processes used to have. Yes, it's a client-oriented model of governance too. The next question goes to Anastasiya. We know very well, we're very happy that Moscow is spearheading the digital transformation process among Russian regions, and last year it came in very handy because in extreme conditions, amid drastic changes brought about by the coronavirus pandemic, the groundwork that had been created in healthcare, in city governance, all of that proved to be a huge help for the city to weather the storm better than London, New York, or Italian cities and towns. Yes, it was a challenge, it was a huge problem, but thanks heaven, we are managing to overcome it. We need to move forward. What about the future? What interesting projects are there for digital transformation in Moscow? What do you need to do in the coming years? From the outset, I would like to say that the digitalization affects all aspects of human life. This process is impossible to stop. It starts and develops first and foremost in sectors that provide commercial services. And it is very important for these services because otherwise they simply won't exist, they won't survive. I refer to banking, to retail, to taxi. It's more difficult with education and healthcare, with public services because they are more inert, they are more conservative, because these are very complicated services, and any mistake here would have grave consequences. But the process of digitalization is inevitable, and I'm confident that only through digitalization we will be able to propel these services to a whole new level. Unlike the market, the government plays here a very important role, and it is the government that should be the driver of digitalization. Indubitably, this is driven in turn by demands from the citizens. They are becoming more choosy, more selective, and they have the right to require a higher level of quality of services provided by the government. We've been here for 10 years, and there are 370 services that migrated online over the last decade. We created this website, and we're trying to minimize any additional requirements like additional certificates, and we are adopting the proactive approach. We know that it is very easy to get a government service in Moscow. It's very fast. Proactively, many people who go abroad say that they miss these services they used to get here in Moscow. And we're working with the Federal Public Services Portal. We're working with it, but we want regional platforms to stay there because they could be a synergy. Some of them have moved forward very much. Now, as for healthcare, I agree with you totally, Maxim. This is the most important, the most promising area for digitalization. But digital transformation without prior preparations, it's simply impossible. Just as the theater begins from the clothes stand, so this digitalization starts with platforms in hospitals, and from infrastructure we have hospitals that were built a very long time ago. We need not just a digital contour, we also need the medical data. We need to digitize all this medical documentation. In Moscow, we have already completed that work. All the medical database has been digitized by Moscow. And we even went further. We managed to retroactively digitize all children's medical documents, which gives us a chance to organize a wholesale digital transformation. And thanks to the pandemic, to a large extent, in many respects, we have come very close to digitalization. And in some things, in some regards, we've already completed it. And it benefits many people, but these benefits do not arrive at the initial stages, only at the end stages once we've completed everything. But at an initial stage, this is a complicated, complex process, and it's difficult to accomplish in healthcare, in education. And sometimes it makes us rethink our approaches, find new methods for using data. Sometimes we face reluctance, we face resistance. Let's take the taxi industry. When aggregators arrived, big electronic services, when they arrived, first it took a while. It was difficult. So it's the same here. It's a very complex thing. We need to treat it carefully, but we are moving there. We're getting there. First, any digitalization should facilitate the work of medics. It has to decrease the paper load, then it's going to be taken positively by the system. Last year, we introduced a voice registry for those who carry out X-rays. You don't need to type anything. There are voice recognition systems. You can simply say out loud the diagnostic, for instance, and it helps you save time up to 20%. All X-ray specialists across Moscow have access to this service. And increasingly more begin to use this voice recognition software. Another good thing that helps transparency and accessibility is single digital data. They are at single place and they are accessible both by the doctor and by also by the patient, and the doctor can access information from any other hospital where the person was treated, and you can also download any data brought from Germany or from anywhere else. It helps with diagnostics, with facilitating the treatment process, and in this case, you don't need to carry out many exams, many tests, simply because the data are already there. You don't need to redo them. And another important initiative is digital hospitals. Amid the pandemic, we've managed to transform on a wholesale basis our hospitals. That's 7,000 beds, 5 facilities housing more than 1,000 patients and almost the same number of personnel. And they don't need to do anything on paper. And very swiftly, we took a decision to digitize everything very fast. And these hospitals have no paper work at all. Everything is digital. This is a whole new approach to providing experts. It's comprehensive data. It gives you a chance to make decisions faster. You can consult doctors remotely. You can organize council of doctors all of a sudden. And you can also control all processes remotely and digitally. What kind of benefits does it provide to our citizens? It is easier to get an appointment with a doctor. You can get your test results faster. In the past, you had to call the registry desk to find out whether your tests had arrived. You had to go there and there. And right now, you don't need to do that because everything is in digital. It arrives faster than the doctor sees it, and we went further. Amid the pandemic, we understand not people are ready to migrate online so fast, even though it takes just 2 days without need to be there personally. So to be more client-oriented, you can open a medical database of everything related to your health, just as you get a debit card.
We have been able to switch to this simple communications by SMS, and daily SMS to those who received a positive or negative COVID test arrive automatically, which enhances the user experience. What else haven't we been able to achieve? And what will stay is the telemedicine. We had the legal framework for that before, but there were some difficulties in introducing that, implementing that, and low interest among medical personnel. But now we have much broader capabilities. And given the shortage of resources and medical resources and funds, given additional medical constraints and limitations in place, and people were not able to go and see a doctor in a hospital, the telemedicine center that we put on stream in 3 weeks has allowed us to monitor 300,000 people, and we can hand out 1 million consultations, teleconsultations, and the people that stay at home can get in touch with a doctor online and talk to a doctor without any time limits and express all their concerns and fears, which is of paramount importance. And we are obliged to get in touch with our patients via the telechannel on a daily basis. And as a result of all that, we have been able to make headway despite some of the flaws that the system has. We anyway haven't registered any tensions about these systems, and the feedback from the patients is positive, which is our main achievement. What are the benefits for digitalization for public administration? We will receive colossal, huge, new field of opportunities, and we will be able to see all the actions and the decisions and the outcomes. It's fully transparent. And for the Moscow healthcare system, with 160,000 of medical personnel and with a huge number of medical establishments, that is definitely an asset. And the digitalization allows us to minimize or bring to naught the risks of inappropriate behavior within a system. Previously, there was a decree by the health department, and it was manually executed, and we received quite positive reports. But, in the digital format, we receive a different picture, and now we know that our previous perceptions were a far cry from the reality. So now we know that we want to shorten the uptime since we make a decree and till it's implemented. We made decisions on how to treat COVID patients with mild, average, and grave symptoms, and the medications are to be handed out by the government. And when the decree arrives, I'll bet it's going to take doctors 5 days to fully adopt that, because the results of the protocols of each patient, the records of each patient, are uploaded to the system, and final fine-tuning and tweaking after a decree arrives takes 3, 4, or 5 days. But a year ago, it took us much longer to start acting in full compliance with the new patterns and algorithms of patient treatment. Otherwise, we would have spent much longer to accommodate new practices and new treatment regimes. Another baseline example to cite with respect to a structural change thanks to the digitalization, it's X-ray services. We have a uniform data array for images and for those who describe those images, and X-ray professionals don't need to be next to the hardware. They don't need to be on the premises of a health clinic. We have a single radiology center where all those radiologists are seated. So they will stop going to local hospitals. They will be seated all together. And now that will allow for better specialization of radiologists, and they will be able to issue better and more precise descriptions. With respect to what we have planned for future, it's AI, it's clinical decisions aiding system. Last year we thought it would take us several years to introduce. Now it's the routine practice. Yes, we are applying it, have been applying it with COVID patients, and we have received a 30% time reduction to describe an image. Same refers to oncology, so this digital vision is a very good thing. And preliminary diagnosis with Sberbank is another project, and we have set 760,000 diagnoses with that help. And you have been quite right in saying that all the digital changes as of today may help improve the patient treatment quality to a no less extent than the development of the medical science and S&T progress. Thank you, Anastasia. But the journey that you have undertaken will take long and will have to advance further to introduce wearable devices and other new solutions. And data analysis will become a uniform thing, and we will know better what the lifestyles of people are and what the movements and migrations of people are. With respect to AI, algorithms and standard patterns will be introduced and routine manual action will be reduced. So it's going to be a client journey that will be client-centric, and the user experience will be enhanced, and the healthy lifespan of our people will be extended with the help of the state-of-the-art technology. I'm confident that Moscow will have the global lead in this. As in other countries, we see that digitalization trails, and Moscow will be at the forefront and will share its best practices with the rest of the country later on. In your intervention, you've mentioned the cab drivers and the cab industry. Let me recall one of my talks with Arkady Volozhin, who told a simple and clear-cut story. He said that Yandex is praised always for, like, a while ago in 2010, launching that Yandex Taxi project. It's one of the flagship undertakings of Yandex. Yandex was acted with a lot of forethoughtfulness. And back in 2010, we had lots of startups. He said Yandex Taxi was one of them, and it proved successful. But some other startups, they came to naught. They fizzled out. Some of those projects would lift off, others would not. But thanks to the corporate culture and their ideology, they have been able to become the only company globally that is capable of competing with global transnational giants without any governmental support. The Chinese companies are quite active also, but they receive a full-fledged, wholehearted backing from the government, while Yandex has been in direct competition with Google and Uber, but still without any governmental support. So, Tigran, what are the breaking news from Yandex? Any new projects in the pipeline? What digital transformation needs for the economy, and what benefits will the people in our country derive? Yandex has a huge incubator, you are right, when you tell us about taxi project. It's speaking with hindsight. We remember that we had lots of projects in the past, but not all of them lifted off. Now we have lots of undertakings, If you ask me where we will end up after the pandemic and what the role of technology giants like Yandex would be, let us look back and recall how different industries, logistics, online trade and medicine advanced in the past, as well as other. Areas of people's lives, how they were digitalizing by and by, but The year 2020 was the turbo or reset button, and it has expedited and augmented all the processes, including service delivery, because of the restrictions, we had to introduce a new modus operandi, and we saw a augmentation coming into play. So what comes next? Will it peter out? Will we forget about that when the pandemic abates, or shall it be a springboard for the technology to keep developing and taking new niches? My vision is that we have seen huge new demand, and in all the spheres, like telemedicine has just been mentioned, which is a very complex and complicated scheme. It is one of the examples of benefits for people and improving their daily routine and raising living standards. And now we're seeing shifts in the demand paradigms, and people want new types and kinds of services, and they probably may expect in a year that a doctor would call them or send them a message via messenger instead of waiting for hours till the doctor comes to your place. And now we're seeing the digital trade developing rapidly. We're seeing huge marketplaces like Amazon, and vicinity shops also, and drugstores also offer digital services, and that would lend shopping brand new quality. Users would want to see a courier depicted on the map in real-time format, how he or she would move to reach the destination. So this last mile format must be improved, enhanced. As regards education, most of education will come back to schools, to the personal face-to-face format, but at the same time, lots of courses will be held remotely, online, and in the past it was hard and costly to receive online education, remote education. It will cease to be expensive in the future. New services will emerge, allowing us to work remotely and improving comfort. How many employees work remotely? The proportion of those who work remotely is 72%, and only 2%. Prior to the New Year, we had 18% working on the premises. Now it's 20%. So our company is quite productive and efficient. Sometimes people lack socialization. It is an issue. Well, for the first couple of months, it was quite cool, and it gave us a kick to work from home, to work remotely. But later, it became irksome and tiresome and started boring us. Like staying all the day within the confines of your flat is something that may hassle people. So for your sector, there are no limitations because of the pandemic. The colleagues from Moscow may send a makeshift vaccination point for all the employees of Yandex. They will send a vaccination team to you. By the way, IT professionals
количество вакцинированных. Потому что
I'm among
что можно пробовать
the leaders of the vaccination. They demonstrate the highest demand for vaccination and they're quite active. Thank you. Our debate is nearing its end and I'll ask a quick-fire question in its final part. We spoke about the benefits of digitalization, but anyway, the digital transformation of any field, any area would mean structural change. But as a result of structural change, there are the winners and the losers.
Почему-то очевидно, что дельта от цифровой трансформации,
Should we
она
act?
абсолютно
And
Но как сделать так, чтобы
the
позитив, он стал не уделом узкой группы,
final outcome of the digital transformation is definitely positive. But what we want is to see benefits for everybody. We should have a good labor market. We should have the data security. But how can we make all those digital solutions accessible and available to everybody? Let's start with Anton. Well, I think that digitalization as such has 2 points on board, like the transformation of the labor market and the some of the professions disappear, and at the same time we saw the delivery of items and food items booming in 2020, so demand for this profession rose. And using big data, we have been able to make managerial solutions. And in 2020, we launched the labor market monitoring mechanism. With a 1 month delay, we have information about all the employers in this country, including all the 55 million of the working age people. Within 1 month, we can have information about 23 million workers. We can see the arrivals and departures at each of the enterprises and organizations, and using the track records of labor track records of our workers and employees, we can range all people, make rankings, and use that data. Probably I will trespass on someone else's territory, but you know, with universities, we may make projections how many people, how many students would want to enter the Soviet university. And another domain is the transformation of the labor market with the help of the new technology. It's more difficult, but now we have come up with a service to control the future employment of graduates. We can see the track record of each and every graduate, and we can see what is their job story after they finish an establishment, leave an establishment. And we can see some coefficients and factors, and all that provides us with a toolkit that helps us respond swiftly to the changes in the labor market. And we, anyway, are capable to act in a proactive way and embrace different levels of public administration, like the regional and municipal and the local levels, with digital tools, and that will enhance the stability of the labor market, and will be able to act in a thoughtful manner. So you want to act, you want to be proactive, you want to avoid problems, you want to prevent them from happening, and you have the tools. Yes.
Для меня сложный вопрос, потому что, с одной стороны, мы говорим о доступности.
For me, Daniil Egorov, it is a vexed question, as I believe that, well, the accessibility is something that we should take into account. If we have the digital infrastructure in place, the services are available to everybody, which is obvious. You can see that all the phones are quite affordable now in different price categories that are affordable to people. Now we're thinking about the transformation of the term service, and want to figure what service, what specific service this or that person would need. And we are aware that some of the digital systems and capabilities may help us customize our products, accommodate services to specific needs. It's not one size fits for all, no. We'll customize, and this indeed is a very complicated technology. Well, it's about what level of customization we may reach, working with the help of big data. That remains to be seen. And the second point to bear in mind is the data protection. It's an item for a global discussion, a separate discussion. We may start telling you how we protect data and work with the data holders and providers. And I can recall a meeting with the digital security professionals, and I put some of the data in question. I disputed some of the data, and they responded that the ideal and perfect way to protect data is to destroy them, because when we have the surplus of data, a glut of data, that may not be a fully good thing, because at the start of the pandemic, all the agencies wanted data from us. What kind of data, we asked them? All data, all possible data. And I thought that they were still fresh in this new trend. And now we are limiting by the added value derived with the help of data. And a special debate, a special field for discussion is how to share data in order to generate added value. That would be something that would be double-edged. The data may be made public. But you know, probably we have lost the game about the data protection already. And we should be quite peculiar about what data we protect, what exactly we protect. And we should be thinking about all these things. And now, within the tax authority, we are launching projects that would be similar to an online one-stop shop. And you would subscribe to our data and derive benefit. So the more impersonal and public data we have at hand, the better will be the effect. Anastasiya, I'm in agreement with what has been said by the previous speakers, but I want to say that for education and healthcare, digitalization will not result in unemployment, no. It will help offset the shortage of high-skilled personnel that we are now experiencing. And as regards data protection, that merits a special discussion. I agree with Daniil, Tigran. I'll tell you a story, an anecdote. A month ago, we received a letter from a taxi driver from Kazan. So the cab driver wrote a letter to us. He told us, it's last week when I work as a cab driver, I will switch to become a Python developer with a local company. But anyway, he wrote a letter of gratitude to us because we gave him a chance to to take a course for Python beginners. A 45-year-old man with some technical background. So at any historical moment of time, at any point in history, we saw developments in times when people had to change a profession. Some professions die out with the S&T progress, and now new technologies have emerged in personnel training that allow for quicker, cheaper, and better advanced training and retraining. And this anecdote about the cab driver is not an exception. It's not a rare case. We have lots of similar examples. Yandex has Yandex Practicum service to offer to people who want advanced or additional training. And I think that it will enjoy demand from people who are in search of new opportunities. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I am confident and positive that the digital transformation of Russian economy and welfare will benefit all the nationals, and I am also confident that the digital technologies will not be able to replace or supersede face-to-face contacts, so I hope that month after month the pandemic will subside and we'll come back to our routines. Thank you.